Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Putnam. I am thankful to all news resources. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European and Canadian channels. African, Asian channels and all news agencies have reported the same news. Now the news in detail. A container ship collided with Baltimore Bridge. Search for survivors is continued. Authorities are still looking for answers. Access to milfristone abortion tablet will be decided by Supreme Court. Big differences between defense ministers of American and Israeli on Gaza. Russia continued to blame Ukraine for the Moscow terrorist attack. Wall Street reporter in Russian prison. British court stopped extradition of Julius Assange. Venezuelan opposition leader barred from election. A gag order for Trump by court. Kennedy announces vice president for election. On Wall Street, Dow Jones Industrial, Nasdaq and S&P 500 all went down. French president in Brazil.
Bridge was built in 1977. In Senegal, Bassirou Diomaye Faye has declared victory in Sunday's presidential election. His main rival, former Senegalese Prime Minister Amadou Ba, called Faye to concede Monday after provisional results put Faye at over 53% of the vote. Faye turned 44 on Monday. He'll become Africa's youngest elected president. He has vowed to fight corruption and poverty and to direct Senegal's revenue from natural resources to provide better economic opportunities for residents. Faye spoke Monday from the capital, Dakar.
The Senegalese people have chosen to break with the past to give substance to the immense hopes raised by our vision of society. I hope that our vision of society has given substance to their aspirations. I pledge to govern with humility and transparency, and to fight corruption at all levels. I pledge to devote myself fully to rebuilding our institutions and strengthening the foundations of our way of life together.
Bassirou Diomaye Faye is backed by the popular opposition leader Ousmane Sonko, who was forbidden to run. Until recently, the two men were sitting in prison cells, but they were released just 10 days before the election after outgoing President Macky Sall granted the pair amnesty. In Ecuador, the mayor of the coastal city of San Vicente was found shot dead in a car Sunday. Brigitte Garcia was 27 years old, Ecuador's youngest mayor. Her communications director was also killed in the attack. Ecuador has been under a state of emergency since January due to rising violence by armed groups linked to the drug trade. This is Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa.
The assassination of the mayor of San Vicente and her communications director also remind us that this fight is not over. It has only just begun. It also gives us a warning and precise information that there's narco-terrorism within public institutions and there's narco-terrorism among public officials, which we are cleaning up. Still, very soon, this will come to light.
NBC News has come under fire by its own star anchors for hiring former Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel as a political analyst. On Monday, MSNBC hosts, including Mika Brzezinski, Joe Scarborough, and Joy Reid, all called out the decision on their live shows. Rachel Maddow, MSNBC's highest-rated anchor, devoted a 30-minute monologue to the news.
The person who was the head of the Republican Party during Donald Trump's time in office and during his effort to throw out the election result and stay in power anyway, and during his effort to run for election again after having done that, is Ronna Romney McDaniel. And she pitched in and helped. She helped set in motion the part of the plot that involved sending fake Trump electors to Congress.
Rachel Maddow added, quote, "You're priming the American public to not accept the results of the next election either," she said. Chuck Todd also fiercely attacked his own network. A New York appeals court on Monday reduced Donald Trump's bond to $175 million in a civil fraud case, down from $464 million, and gave Trump an extension of 10 days to pay it as he appeals the case. The ruling means New York Attorney General Letitia James will not be able to enforce the judgment against Trump just yet, including the seizure of his assets. Separately, Monday, a New York judge rescheduled the start of Trump's hush money trial for April 15th. Trump's lawyers had sought to postpone his first criminal trial, arguing the recent release of over 100,000 pages of evidence made it impossible to prepare in time. The judge harshly disagreed. We'll have more on that story with David K. Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. The U.S. Supreme Court's hearing arguments today in a case that could severely limit access to the abortion pill mifepristone, which is used for roughly 2/3 of all U.S. abortions. Last year, the Fifth Circuit Court sided with a right-wing Texas judge who ruled the FDA improperly eased regulations on the bill to make it more accessible some 20 years ago. The Supreme Court that overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022 will now decide whether to reverse the FDA measures which made the pill available through the mail and via telemedicine. It could also roll back the FDA's decision to lengthen the window within which mifepristone can be taken, which is now through 10 weeks of gestation. And here in New York, home health aides ended their 6-day hunger strike Monday, during which they called on the city to end grueling 24-hour workdays. The home health workers, the majority of whom are women of color and immigrant women, have been demanding New York City Council Speaker Adrienne Adams bring the No More 24 Act to a vote. Democracy Now! Spoke to some of the hunger strikers outside City Hall.
For many of us working 24-hour workdays, we are forced to work these kinds of shifts, because if we refuse, then a company won't assign us work. Only 24 hours or very few hours. So we really need to stop this kind of practice.
We will continue to fight against the 24-hour workdays until Adrienne Adams passed the No More 24 Act to stop it. Otherwise, she will have to step down.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez in Chicago.
The search teams were swimming through thousands of pounds of debris in pitch black water, very dangerous conditions. And when your car plunges into water, what do? And when you're rescuing people trapped in cars underwater, what are the variables? Douglas Bishop's an underwater search and recovery expert who finds cars and solves missing persons cases. When you now have a search and rescue mission underway, and they've said that now there are going to be probably no survivors, are the lives of the rescue crew now at stake in these conditions?
Absolutely, 100%. Anytime you involve a rescue operation or recovery operation and you have the different variables that upgrade the risk assessment and factors there on site, you have so many different things that are at play. The integrity of the environment, water. Can't account for everything. Also, you have tons of unstable steel and concrete and so forth. These things drastically challenge any type of recovery whatsoever, let alone one of this magnitude. It's astronomical. The dangers involved when you have low visibility, current, and so forth. I mean, it's really never ending. It's one of the most challenging recoveries that we've seen of late.
My family, Doug, just bought one of those little hammers that you're supposed to use if your car does submerge in water.
Yes.
You bang it. Is that what people do? Is that the only way to survive? And how long does it take before it's too late?
Seconds count. It happens way quicker than you could ever imagine. The most important thing to remember is to be prepared. And when emergencies and accidents like this happen, they don't happen on a schedule. They happen in the blink of an eye when you least suspect it. So being prepared is the number one thing that you can do. Having a window breaker like we offer at UnitedSearchCorps.org is one of the most important steps in this. But if you don't have one and you find yourself in this situation, there's 4 letters that everyone needs to remember right now watching this. And that's SWCO. And that's seatbelt, window, children, out. You got to take your seatbelt off first. You can't do anything. You can't save your life with your seatbelt on. You immediately, as soon as you can, you put the window down so your electronics don't fail and so that pressure doesn't prohibit your window from opening. So seatbelt, window, open your window, and children are first. You get to your children first. Once your children are out, then you are out, because once you're out of a vehicle, you're not getting back into that vehicle to rescue anybody. So SWCO, seatbelt, window, children, out.
Seatbelt, window, children, out. Got it. Doug, thanks
Correct.
so much, and thanks for your courage, and thanks for
Thank you.
coming on Primetime. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.
Bidenomics is so great that Americans aren't living paycheck to paycheck anymore. They're living pawn shop to pawn shop. Now, people who've never ever walked into a pawn shop in their lives are now walking in desperate. Maybe they have their engagement ring in their hand or a few rare coins a grandmother gave them. Given the high cost of food, high cost of gas, everything really is high cost. It's a last resort. People need a little extra cash just to get by. And when pawn shop store inventory rises, that means fewer buyers than sellers. Another sign that for the lowest income Americans, times remain tough. Joining me now is Les Gold, owner of American Jewelry and Loan, and you know him from the reality show Hardcore Pawn. Les, great to see you. What are your customers telling you now about the situation out there?
Well, my customers have been telling me for years, but lately, in the last 6 months, we have more customers coming in that are desperate in need of money. They need to put food on their table, gas in their tank, and a roof over their heads. So we see a lot more customers coming in now for loans.
And is it just getting by month to month on the basic necessities that they need? Are they trying to pay off loans that they owe, or just food, gas?
No, you're saying month to month. You're saying month to month. Our customers, our clientele, are pawning items to make it through the week. They're not worried about the next month. They're, a paycheck may come and may not come. But they come in each and every day to pawn their items because they're in need of money, like I said, just for the necessities.
Oh, that is just a heartbreak. Are there parts of the country that are worse off that you can kind of glean from your experience in the pawn shop world?
Pawn business, pawn businesses are all over the United States, and I hear from all of the people that I know that are in the business, everybody across the United States is dealing with the same item, same problems. The retail isn't as good, so you need cash to give out, and there's not always that amount of cash that you can always give out to the customer. The good thing is, pawn shops, pawning items, they're non-recourse loans, so it's not going to hurt their credit scores or their ability to get credit.
Now, tell us about the oddest things that have ever been pawned in your experience. I know it's a long list, but the audience wants to know.
Well, it's a long list, but what comes to mind first is, if you remember Jack Kevorkian, Dr. Death, who did assisted suicides in the state of Michigan, somebody came in and ended up selling me his van. So of all the things that I've ever taken in, that was the most unique. Yeah, the Dr. Death's van.
How much did you get for it?
Well, it was on the show. I ended up we made a bet. The guy wanted $40,000. I flipped him 20 or 40. I got it for $20,000. So it was still really not worth the money, but just the idea of having something so iconic, I had to make the deal. So
some more traditional or conservative Americans would say burn it. You once said that pawn shops can predict the economy 6 months in advance, but we keep hearing Bidenomics is working, the economy is getting better and improving. We've been hearing that for some time. So what's your prediction now?
Well, I see it each and every day. 6 months ago, we have 2 lines that come to the store: the redeem line, which is the line that people pick up their merchandise, and the pawn line, which is the line that they bring in their merchandise to get money on. Right now, the pawn line is probably twice as long as the redemption line for people picking up merchandise. So we know in advance. We're street level economists. We know what's happening way before the media does.
Les, it is both fascinating and deeply disturbing. Americans deserve better than this, but thank you very much for explaining this to us. We needed to understand this.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our...
The entire Key Bridge has fallen into the harbor.
The catastrophic bridge collapse in Baltimore.
Yo! What the?
Tonight, the search for answers as a construction company says 6 of its workers are presumed dead.
We're going away from the search and rescue portion to a recovery operation.
What we're learning about the vessel's loss of power and that mayday call that may have saved lives. This bridge carries some 30,000 people every day. It is a major commuter route, and now it is completely shut down. The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We are here tonight not far from that catastrophic collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. The devastation is beyond words, with this massive structure in ruins, twisted and broken. By daylight, the extent of what happened here became more clear. The video is stunning, and it tells us a lot about what happened after the ship lost power, then collided with the bridge. Tonight, we're also learning more about the survivors and the missing. Construction workers were fixing potholes on this heavily traveled bridge in the early hours of the morning. The community here devastated, many telling us this view will never be the same, with the bridge that has stood for decades no longer in the skyline. A state of emergency now issued by Maryland's governor, and everyone from the federal government to local law enforcement pitching in to help a community in shock. Dramatic video captured the horrifying moment the massive cargo ship, nearly 1,000 feet long, crashed into a support column on the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore.
The whole bridge just fell down. Everybody. The whole bridge just collapsed.
Within seconds, a large portion of the bridge collapses, plunging into the Patapsco River.
We are still investigating what happened, but we are quickly gathering details. The preliminary investigation points to an accident. We haven't seen any credible evidence of a terrorist attack.
A closer look at the video shows the ship heading south at about 1:24 a.m. when the lights go dark but quickly on again. A minute later, plumes of black smoke can be seen billowing from the ship's chimney. Once again, it appears the ship loses its lights. A minute after they come back on, the vessel slams into the bridge.
Never would you think that you would physically see the Key Bridge tumble down like that. It looked like something out of an action movie.
Sources tell CBS News multiple alarms rang out on ship. After several failed attempts to fix the loss of propulsion, the pilot issued a mayday call, giving officials time to stop traffic on the bridge.
These people are heroes. They saved lives last night.
The impact of the crash was so loud, it jolted Donald Heinbuck, who lives nearby, out of his sleep. What did it feel like?
It felt just like an earthquake. We've had some earthquakes here before, and that's exactly what it felt like. And associated with that was the rolling thunder, which I thought was very unusual.
What was the rolling thunder?
It was the sound of the bridge collapsing into the Patapsco River.
Well, it's just incredible to see this firsthand. I mean, we are not far from this. And of course, this bridge carries some 30,000 people every day. It is a major commuter route, and now it is completely shut down. The FBI using robotic cameras underwater to search for 6 construction workers who were on the bridge. They are now presumed dead.
Based on the length of time that we've gone in the search, the extensive search efforts that we've put into it, the water temperature, that at this point, we do not believe that we're going to find any of these individuals still alive.
24 members of the NTSB are on the site leading the investigation. They want to examine the voyage data recorder.
It will be critical. It's a critical piece of our investigation, which is why we have a recorder's team here.
Authorities say the Singapore-flagged vessel was headed from Baltimore to Sri Lanka, going 9 miles per hour. None of the crew was hurt. Today, President Joe Biden said the federal government will, quote, move heaven and earth to reopen the port and pay for the rebuilding.
I told them we're going to send all the federal resources they need as we respond to this emergency. I mean, all the federal resources. And we're going to rebuild that port together.
Now, federal officials tonight are here on the scene, including the FBI and the National Transportation Safety Board. They're here to investigate. CBS's Chris Van Cleve reports on the timeline of the incident and a similar accident that took place more than 4 decades ago.
By daybreak, the force of the collision was clear. Pieces of the mangled Francis Scott Key Bridge and crushed cargo containers littered the deck of the Dolly. But the first sign of trouble, here, when the lights flickered and went out on board. The giant ship had lost its engine, its electronics, and much of its ability to steer, leaving it on a collision course with the bridge and little time to avert disaster. A mayday call went out as the nightmare scenario unfolded. Michael Kacharski is a former NTSB senior marine investigator.
Losing power as you're approaching a bridge would be just about the worst case scenario.
Loaded down with heavy containers, the captain tried to quickly slow down the more than 900-foot-long cargo ship by dropping its port anchor. Dark smoke could be seen billowing from its stacks, likely the backup generator coming online. But the ship never regained engine power, and it struck one of the 2 main structural support columns of the bridge. Ben Schaefer is a structural engineer.
Once the bridge was struck by a container ship of that size, there's not a bridge that we build, that's any level of economy and efficiency that's going to survive that.
It's happened before. In 1980, during a blinding thunderstorm, a cargo ship slammed into a support column of Tampa's Sunshine Skyway Bridge. A 1,200-foot span collapsed. 35 people were killed. Since then, cargo ships have more than quadrupled in size.
In the world of infrastructure system, it's a failure, right? I mean, the bridge is gone, the port is closed, people have died.
And Chris Van Cleve is with us now. Okay, so this investigation is just getting underway. What's the NTSB looking for?
Well, Nora, they're going to have to contend with a lot of debris. This was like ramming a Nimitz-size aircraft carrier into this bridge. So there's debris everywhere, but they want to get on board. They want to find the data and voice recorder that should be on board. They're also going to look at the maintenance history of this ship, including reports that the propulsion system may have failed in inspection over the summer. They also want to look at the bridge's maintenance history and its design.
Yeah, how does the power go out? Chris Van Cleve, thank you so much. A short time ago, we spoke with Maryland Governor Wes Moore to ask about the families of the missing and the survivors. And what do we know about the victims' families? How are they doing?
I had the chance to spend time with the victims' families, and they're distraught and they're heartbroken. But I tell you, the hopefulness that they have. These are very prayerful families, and I had the chance to pray with them and pray for them. They define what it means to be Maryland tough and to be Baltimore strong.
2 people were miraculously rescued. What do we know about the survivors?
So there are two people that we know. One who's actually in shock trauma right now, and so we have a remarkable shock trauma unit here in the city of Baltimore, and they're actively working on one individual and another individual who was actually the leader of that group who watched it all take place, and I had a chance to spend time with him, and literally he tells a story where he was actually walking away from the bridge when the bridge began to collapse, and so he's watching what happened to him, and even as he said that was all God's grace.
That's incredible. So essentially, he barely escaped.
He barely escaped. I mean, this was an absolute catastrophic event.
And Governor, I know so many people depend on this bridge to get to work. How quickly can this bridge be rebuilt?
This is going to be a top priority for us to make sure that we can get this bridge built back up.
Part of our conversation with Maryland's Governor Wes Moore, he's actually been at the site of this collapse since early this morning, and he also told us that every day, $191 million of economic activity crosses over that bridge, and the Port of Baltimore is responsible for at least 8,000 jobs. So we asked CBS's Ramy Inocencio to look at the impact for the city, state, and our country.
Collapsing in seconds, Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge was the gateway to much of the country. Thousands of trucks transported goods on it daily. Goods, much of which would end up at this 350,000 square foot warehouse. John Schmidt is Vice President and Chief Operating Officer.
It's going to add probably a couple $100 minimum to every truckload.
Each truckload carrying everything from dry goods like food to reams of paper and office machinery.
What's your warning to consumers?
Your product might take a little longer to get to you.
The Port of Baltimore is one of 3 ports along the East Coast that are at least 50 feet deep and can handle large ships like the Dali. It's the U.S.'s busiest port for cars, trucks, and sugar, handling more than $80 billion in goods last year, employing more than 15,000 jobs.
There is no question that this will be a major and protracted impact to supply chains.
Amazon, FedEx, and other multinationals tell CBS News they're still assessing the economic impact.
The best case for the port in terms of getting it to be working again is probably about a month.
And worst case scenario?
You're looking at a minimum of a year, and I'd be surprised if it's not 2 years.
And before the Port of Baltimore can reopen, authorities first need to remove all of the debris and then re-dredge that part of the river. But Nora, there's no timeline at all for when that might happen.
Really interesting, Ramy Inocencio. Thank you so much. In today's other major news, nearly 2 years after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, abortion rights returned to the nation's highest court. At issue is access to the widely used abortion pill, mifepristone, along with the FDA's authority to regulate other prescription drugs. CBS's Jan Crawford was there for the oral arguments.
Protests made clear the controversy. But inside the court, there appeared to be agreement, with a majority of justices on both sides of the ideological aisle highly skeptical of arguments to restrict use of the so-called abortion pill. A key question: why should courts be second-guessing scientific decisions by the FDA on how a drug is prescribed?
Do you have concerns about judges parsing medical and scientific studies?
At issue in the case, the drug mifepristone, used with another drug in nearly 2/3 of abortions. A group of anti-abortion doctors argue the FDA wrongly expanded access to the pill in 2016, when it extended the window women can take it from 7 to 10 weeks, and during the pandemic in 2021, said an in-person doctor's visit was not needed, allowing mail-order pharmacies to ship the drug nationwide. Erin Hawley represents the doctors who say those changes led to increased emergency room visits and compromised women's health.
Women are now left to receive these drugs in the mail or in their dorm room without ever having been checked by a doctor for life-threatening conditions. That's reckless.
Abortion rights supporters say mifepristone is the safest method of abortion, and the FDA, not the court system, has the final word on drug safety.
The FDA acted on an extensive body of evidence and well within its authority and in accordance with the law.
But in court, most of the 90-minute argument focused not on the merits of the FDA's decision to expand access, but whether the doctors even have legal standing to sue.
And Jan Crawford joins us now. So Jan, did we get a sense of how the justices might rule?
Yeah, I mean, I think the argument suggested is going to be a narrow procedural ruling for the FDA, and that would preserve nationwide access to the abortion pill. But we should have a decision by the end of June. Nora?
Jan Crawford at the Supreme Court, thank you. Former President Donald Trump was hit with another gag order today. This time it was imposed by the New York judge overseeing the trial connected to Trump's hush money payments to former porn star Stormy Daniels. The gag order came after the former president lashed out at the judge and his daughter on social media. In other news, shares of Trump's media company soared more than 16% in the first day of trading, which now has a market value of nearly $8 billion. Tonight, the first public statement from music mogul Sean Diddy Combs following raids on 2 of his homes as part of a possible sex trafficking investigation. CBS's Carter Evans reports on what authorities may have been looking for.
There was nothing subtle when federal agents conducted high-profile raids at 2 large properties in Los Angeles and Miami, owned by music mogul Sean Diddy Combs. Raids that tonight his attorney calls a gross overuse of military-level force. Why a simultaneous cross-country search?
Oh, I think they wanted this to be a bit of a surprise. It's a big raid, and what they were going in was to try to find all types of evidence.
There are 2 distinct images of Combs. The iconic performer and the one named in multiple lawsuits accusing him of everything from rape to sex trafficking. Last December, Combs posted a statement saying, "I did not do any of the awful things being alleged." The lawsuits so far have been in civil court. As for the latest searches,
If it involves sex trafficking or drugs or weapons or other illegal behavior, it can easily go from a civil investigation to what we see now, a criminal investigation.
TMZ published video, it says, was after the raids began. It showed Combs walking around Opa-locka Airport near Miami. A short time later, at the same airport, Miami-Dade police arrested Brendan Paul for drug possession. Paul was described in a previous lawsuit as Diddy's mule, someone used to get drugs and guns.
So what Sean Combs needs to do is follow his lawyer's advice, which undoubtedly is not to talk to people, not try to hinder the investigation, and not try to flee.
Now, Diddy's lawyer calls the law enforcement action an unprecedented ambush. He says his client is innocent, and he emphasized that Combs was never detained. In fact, he cooperated and even spoke with investigators. Nora?
Carter Evans, thank you very much.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin met with his Israeli counterpart at the Pentagon today, with tensions between their administrations at a wartime high. Austin told Defense Minister Gallant that the number of civilian casualties in the Gaza Strip is far too high and the amount of humanitarian aid is far too low. Israeli forces continue to pound the city of Rafah, where more than 1 million Palestinians are seeking shelter from the war. Robert Kennedy Jr. picks a running mate for his independent run for the White House. We'll tell you who it is. That's next. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. introduced his running mate today, choosing Silicon Valley lawyer and investor and philanthropist Nicole Shanahan. Shanahan is 38 and the ex-wife of Google co-founder Sergey Brin. Kennedy, running as an independent, also considered NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers, who shares his skepticism of vaccines, and former Minnesota governor and wrestler Jesse Ventura. An important note, Kennedy is currently on the ballot in only one state, Utah, in the general election. Today, a Russian court tacked on an additional 3 months of pre-trial jail time for Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich. It was a year ago this week that he became the first American journalist arrested on spying charges in Russia since the Cold War. The U.S. considers both Gershkovich and former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan as wrongfully detained on bogus charges. The lottery jackpots keep piling up. We'll tell you how much is up for grabs tonight when we return. Americans were lining up today for a shot at 2 huge lottery jackpots. Tonight's Mega Millions grand prize now tops $1.1 billion, and tomorrow night's Powerball jackpot has grown to $865 million. College basketball superstar Caitlin Clark led the Iowa Hawkeyes into the Sweet 16 of the women's NCAA tournament. Clark scored 32 points in their win over West Virginia, breaking the season scoring record. Clark's season total now stands at 1,113 points. She'll try to add to that on Saturday against Colorado. We'll be right back with a final note on the Francis Scott Key Bridge and its iconic namesake. We wanted to end tonight here, near the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which has significant meaning for the country. This is where it's believed Francis Scott Key witnessed the battle that inspired him to write America's national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. He saw the rocket's red glare just a few hundred yards from where the bridge bearing his name stood for decades. This red, white, and blue buoy marks the location. In the War of 1812, Key was detained aboard a boat while the Battle of Baltimore raged for 25 hours. By the dawn's early light, as he wrote, the American flag yet waved. His patriotic poem, set to music, officially became the national anthem in March 1931. Almost exactly 47 years ago, this majestic steel span across the Patapsco River opened to traffic. It was among the marvels of 20th century engineering. This bridge tonight, in ruins, but the message of Key's anthem still true. A message of American resilience, perseverance in the face of adversity. By the dawn's early light of another day, this community will surely rise again. And that is tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell. Good night.
Tonight, the horrific bridge collapse here in Baltimore, the search for victims, the investigation tonight. How could this happen? The stunning new images showing the moment a massive container ship crashed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge here in Baltimore, plunging the bridge into the river. Authorities on their radios just moments before sending out warnings to keep drivers off the bridge, and then the collapse.
The whole bridge just collapsed.
The ship going dark just moments before impact. The crew issuing a mayday. An 8-person road group still on the bridge when it went down. And tonight, what we have just learned here about the ship. Just moments ago, my interview with Maryland Governor Wes Moore. What happened in the moments before that collision. And our team here in Baltimore with the history of this ship. The crash just a couple of years back. Also tonight, the high-stakes battle over the abortion pill following the overturning of Roe v. Wade by the Supreme Court. The court now deciding whether to restrict the abortion pill across this country. What the justices said today, what they signaled already. Rachel Scott at the Supreme Court. Tonight, the federal raids at the homes of Sean Diddy Combs in Los Angeles and Miami, and sources tonight now telling ABC News this is a sex trafficking investigation involving Combs. Tonight, with federal authorities seized in those homes. Tonight, Donald Trump facing mounting legal bills and that bond now due in 9 days. Tonight, Donald Trump revealing he is now selling Bibles, charging $59.99. In New York City tonight, the subway rider accused of intentionally shoving a subway rider in front of the train onto the tracks. Tonight, news coming in of the arrest. We're tracking severe storms across several states tonight, lightning and damaging winds. Heavy rain also moving up the East Coast, Florida, right up through Washington, D.C., Philadelphia to New York City, and we'll time it out. And the heroes here in Baltimore who put out the emergency call just moments before the bridge came down here to keep drivers off the bridge. They saved countless lives.
From ABC News, this is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir, reporting tonight from Baltimore Harbor, Maryland.
And good evening tonight from Baltimore Harbor, Maryland. We are here at the scene of the catastrophic collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge here in Baltimore. You can actually see the cargo ship right here behind me. That's the ship itself. And then right next to it, that hole in the skyline where the bridge once was, that massive cargo ship smashing into the bridge around 1:30 in the morning here, the bridge collapsing right into the harbor waters. The ship had alerted harbor authorities to an emergency. They had lost power, police quickly blocking traffic at both ends, saving lives just before the collision and collapse. But an 8-man maintenance crew was at work on the bridge. 2 workers survived. A live stream camera capturing the stunning moments before the collapse, the ship losing power, the lights going out, then slamming into a bridge support. And that awful moment, the 1.6-mile-long bridge completely fails and collapses. When the sun came up here this morning, the stunning images coming into focus, the tangled metal draped over the ship, and all day long here, the massive search and rescue effort. The Coast Guard, the NTSB, fire departments, and first responders all on the scene here. FBI divers probing the water, sonar detecting vehicles underwater. At this hour, Baltimore has declared a state of emergency. President Biden promising to rebuild the bridge, asking Congress to help. And tonight, what we're now learning from the investigation already, the history of this cargo ship, my interview with the governor of Maryland just moments ago here. But first tonight, the terrifying images, moments before the collision, and then what brought this bridge down. Gio Benitez leading us off here in Baltimore.
Tonight, the image is shocking and devastating. A massive, nearly 1,000-foot cargo container ship losing power and ramming into Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. The 1.6 miles long bridge crashing down in just seconds, plunging into the Patapsco River overnight.
The Key Bridge, the Francis Scott Key Bridge, just got hit by a cargo ship.
Baltimore's mayor declaring a state of emergency. The Coast Guard, the NTSB, and the FBI all on the scene. The intense urgent search and rescue efforts underway. Sonar detecting vehicles underwater. First responders, fire departments, and Coast Guard teams all rushing to the scene in the immediate aftermath. Searching through the overnight hours in the freezing water. Rescuers finding 2 people alive, one of them hospitalized. 6 are still unaccounted for. All believed to be construction workers on the bridge at the time, working to repair potholes. Late tonight, the Coast Guard saying they are now suspending their search for the workers.
Based on the length of time that we've gone in the search, the extensive search efforts that we've put into it, the water temperature, that at this point, we do not believe that we're going to find any of these individuals still alive.
Construction worker Jesus Campos says he knows some of the team working on that bridge.
Eso lo pegó muy duro.
That was really hard, Jesus says. We are colleagues from work and friends.
We pray for the construction workers who are on the Key Bridge, and we pray for everyone who has been touched by this tragedy.
Tonight, we're learning moments before the crash, the ship issued an urgent mayday, allowing quick-thinking police to block traffic on the bridge.
Hold all traffic on the Key Bridge. There's a ship approaching and just lost their steering.
The officers then planning to get the construction crew off that bridge before it collapsed.
The whole bridge just fell down. Start, everybody. The whole bridge just collapsed.
The quick work of law enforcement, who kept more vehicles from coming onto the bridge, they undoubtedly saved an innumerable amount of lives.
It all happened just before 1:30 this morning. You can see cars crossing over the bridge just moments before impact. Video timestamps on this live stream footage showing the ship's lights went off at 1:24 a.m. before turning back on a minute later. Then thick black smoke begins pouring out of the top of the ship. 1:26 a.m. the power turning off again and then back on at 1:27. At 1:28 a.m. you can see the last cars driving over that bridge. And about 30 seconds later, the ship rams into one of the bridge's supports, bringing down the entire bridge. Officials say the ship was moving at 8 knots, roughly 9 miles per hour, much faster than they should have been. So tonight, the major questions. What happened on this cargo ship in the final moments before the collapse? The pilot at the controls is currently undergoing post-accident drug and alcohol testing. It was a local pilot specializing in navigating the port, not part of the ship's crew driving the ship. The cargo ship, named Dolly, was heading from Baltimore to Sri Lanka, flying a Singapore flag. This screen recording from maritime data provider Marine Traffic shows Dolly's track as it approached and collided with the Key Bridge. You can see Dolly veered slightly to the right at this point before hitting the bridge. The FBI saying a preliminary investigation suggests the crash was an accident and that there's no credible evidence of a terrorist attack. A short time ago, President Biden promising to rebuild.
It's my intention that the federal government will pay for the entire cost of reconstructing that bridge, and I expect the Congress to support my effort. This is going to take some time. The people of Baltimore can count on us, though, to stick with them at every step of the way until the port is reopened and the bridge is rebuilt. We're not leaving until this job gets done.
And David, tonight the mayor here has announced a prayer vigil. The community here, really the country, is thinking about these construction workers and their heartbroken families. David.
Gio Benitez is right here in Baltimore with us tonight. Gio, thank you. We turn now to the federal investigation already underway tonight and what we're learning about this ship and its history and a crash it was involved in just a couple of years back. Terry Moran, also right here in Baltimore tonight.
This is the moment that the 95,000-ton cargo ship, the Dolly, was getting perilously close to Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. You can see the power flicker on and off seconds before disaster. Now the urgent investigation into how the crash occurred and if the crew could have done anything more to avoid it. ABC News has obtained records showing the Dolly, built in 2015, had at least 2 documented issues in the past. A June 2023 inspection found a deficiency for propulsion and auxiliary machinery concerning gauges, thermometers, etc. And in 2016, after the ship was involved in a previous crash in Belgium, inspectors issued a deficiency for structural conditions concerning hull damage impairing seaworthiness. This image, taken in Belgium, shows the moment in 2016 that the ship hit a wall. As for the Baltimore Bridge, that 1.6-mile-long span opened in 1977. Experts say it was likely not designed to withstand a crash like the one that occurred overnight.
Once the pier is hit, it just falls vertically down, which would give every indication that either the boat knocked the bridge off of its supports, so it lost the support that way, or literally destroyed that first concrete pier and it lost the support altogether.
In this satellite photo, you can see the protective piers on the power lines running parallel to the bridge, clearly visible. But Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg at a press conference on the scene was skeptical piers would have made any difference.
I do not know of a bridge that has been constructed to withstand a direct impact from a vessel of this size.
850,000 cars and trucks flowed into the port of Baltimore last year, making it the nation's busiest for U.S. auto imports. Tonight, facing the possibility of a prolonged shutdown, the big 3 automakers are diverting shipments to other ports as needed. Maritime experts tell us that the main focus of the investigation is likely to be on why that ship suddenly lost power. They say fire on board, computer system malfunctions, even bad fuel are all possible explanations, and they say investigators will also carefully scrutinize those videos showing the moments of catastrophic collapse. David?
So many important questions tonight. Terry Moran, thanks to you as well. Just a short time ago here, I spoke with Maryland Governor Wes Moore here on the scene all day. I asked the governor if authorities know anything about what happened in those crucial moments right before the collision. Governor Moore, thanks for joining us here tonight. Thank you. You know, we stand here with the bridge collapse right behind us, and we can't help but to think about those workers and the families who have not given up hope all day.
Yeah. You know, I mean, this view, it just looks so foreign. Ever since I've been alive, Key Bridge has been there. And I remember when I first got the phone call in the middle of the night saying the Key Bridge is gone. One, it takes your breath away. And then immediately start thinking about these families. You start thinking about the workers, the families who said goodbye to them with the full expectation they were going to come home. And so these first responders who have just been spending literally from the middle of the night last night continually working in a search and rescue mission. Not just my heart goes out to them, but I'm in complete awe of these first responders as well.
Governor, I know the investigation already underway tonight. We saw those final images of the cargo ship. You saw the lights go off, come back on, go off again, and then what appeared to be a turn at the last minute. Do we have any idea if that pilot and that apprentice were trying to avoid the bridge or what happened in those final moments?
Yeah, the investigation is still going on, but all the indications are showing that they had lost the ability to steer and that they were trying to navigate the ship. And we're talking about a massive vessel moving at a quick clip. And so even as they were trying to move, any forms of deviation in one direction or another could have the potential of having catastrophic impacts, which it did last night.
I really have to give a shout out to the police, the authorities who saw the ship approaching the bridge and did the all call to say, try to halt the traffic, any more traffic coming on the bridge. They saved lives.
These people are heroes. I mean, there are people who made it home to their families last night because our first responders responded in the way that they did. Because by them holding vehicles and keeping vehicles off of that bridge, moments before the bridge fell, they literally saved countless lives last night.
But I understand the pilot who was on that ship undergoing the testing that's mandatory after an accident like this one. How soon could we get some answers about what happened in those final moments?
Yeah, I know we're pushing to get answers as quickly as possible. Where our number one priority right now is both search and rescue and then providing healing to these families, to this community, to a city that is truly heartbroken. The other thing that I know and people can know from me is I and our administration is going to be fully committed to making sure that we rebuild and we take care of these families and take care of this community.
Governor Westmore, Governor of Maryland, thank you for joining us here tonight. I know it's been a very difficult day here.
Thank you so much,
Governor. Thank you. I interviewed with the governor just before we came on the air tonight, and we will have much more on the bridge collapse here in a moment. But we do move on now to the other major news this Tuesday night. The Supreme Court facing the biggest test yet on the issue of abortion since the court overturned Roe 2 years ago. The court now deciding whether to restrict the abortion pill in this country, and what the justices signaled already today. Rachel Scott at the Supreme Court tonight.
Tonight, hundreds of protesters descending on the Supreme Court as the justices hear arguments in the most consequential abortion case since Roe v. Wade was overturned. The court considering whether to roll back access to the abortion pill mifepristone, used in more than half of abortions in the U.S. A group of doctors opposed to abortion rights, arguing that if a woman taking the pill needs emergency care, it would put a doctor who opposes abortion in a terrible position.
These are life-threatening situations in which the choice for a doctor is either to scrub out and try to find someone else or to treat the woman.
But the Justice Department argued that doctors who brought the lawsuit have no grounds to sue.
FDA is not requiring them to do or refrain from doing anything. They are required to treat women who take mifepristone. FDA is not directing the women who take the drug to go seek out care from these specific doctors.
And today, a majority of the justices seem deeply skeptical of the effort to further restrict the drug.
I'm worried that there is a significant mismatch in this case between the claimed injury and the remedy that's being sought. What they're asking for here is that in order to prevent them from possibly ever having to do these kinds of procedures, everyone else should be prevented from getting access to this medication.
Even conservative justices like Neil Gorsuch, nominated by Donald Trump, also sounding uneasy with limiting access to the pill.
And this case seems like a prime example of turning what could be a small lawsuit into a nationwide legislative assembly on an FDA rule or any other federal government action.
The only two justices who seemed inclined to side with the anti-abortion doctors and further restrict access to mifepristone, Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito.
What's on the line here? Access to the abortion pill by mail without multiple trips to the doctor and up until 10 weeks of pregnancy. The FDA calls this safe and effective. The Supreme Court expected to make a decision in June. David.
Rachel Scott at the Supreme Court tonight. Rachel, thank you. Tonight here we have new reporting after the federal raids at the homes of Sean Diddy Combs in Los Angeles and Miami. Sources tonight now telling ABC News this is a sex trafficking investigation involving Combs. And this evening what federal authorities have now seized in those homes. Here's Victor Kendo.
Tonight, ABC News has confirmed that federal agents seized multiple electronic devices from Sean Combs' LA and Miami mansions, and sources tell ABC News that the music and entertainment mogul is the target of a federal sex trafficking investigation. Combs' plane flying from California to Antigua, but it's not clear if Combs was on board. Video obtained by TMZ hours before that plane landed shows Combs pacing outside Miami's Opa-locka airport. The three-time Grammy winner has been the subject of multiple civil lawsuits accusing him of rape and other sexual misconduct. Last month, his ex-music producer, Rodney Jones, sued for $30 million, saying Combs groped, harassed, and threatened him, and was engaged in a widespread and dangerous criminal sex trafficking organization. Jones claimed surveillance video inside Combs' homes recorded many of the incidents listed in his suit.
The allegations in it could have paved the way to create probable cause for law enforcement to get that search warrant to search Sean Combs' home.
And just moments ago, Diddy's attorney saying in a statement, Mr. Combs is innocent and called this a witch hunt. David?
Victor Kendo reporting tonight. Victor, thank you. Overseas and in Russia tonight, American journalist Evan Gershkovich losing his court appeal in Moscow. The Wall Street Journal reporter wrongly detained for nearly a year now. The court rejecting his request to be released, ordering him to remain behind bars until at least June 30th. Russia accusing him of collecting state secrets for the U.S. American Ambassador Lynn Tracy again, calling the allegations categorically untrue. When we come back here tonight in New York City this evening, the suspect accused of intentionally shoving a subway rider onto the tracks in front of a train, news of an arrest. Donald Trump now selling Bibles. What he's charging. Tonight, a suspect has been arrested accused of intentionally shoving a man to his death in front of an oncoming subway in New York City. Carlton McPherson has been charged with murder. Police say Jason Bowles was pushed in front of an approaching 4 train at the 125th Street and Lexington Avenue station in East Harlem. Authorities say it was unprovoked. Tonight, Donald Trump facing mounting legal bills, now revealing he is selling Bibles, charging $59.99 a Bible. This is a licensing deal. Trump will collect royalties, meaning some of the proceeds from the Bible sales will go directly to Trump. When we come back here tonight, tracking severe storms across several states tonight, lightning and damaging winds, and then heavy rain also moving right up the East Coast. We'll track it. Tonight, severe storms across several states, lightning and damaging winds expected in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. Heavy rain up the East Coast from Florida to Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, right into New York City tomorrow. When we come back here tonight, the image we found of the bridge here, the year it opened here in Baltimore, it was a big deal. Before we go, when we arrived here in Baltimore today on the train, a young man said to me, the whole city is feeling this. This bridge was a symbol of Baltimore. The Francis Scott Key Bridge opened in 1977. About 31,000 vehicles crossed the bridge every day. Tonight, this image, a family holding their child along the river's edge, overlooking the bridge that stood here for more than 4 decades. I'm David Muir in Baltimore. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.
A Baltimore bridge collapses after being struck by a container ship. The search for survivors and for answers. Reproductive rights are back before the Supreme Court. At stake, access to a commonly used abortion pill. And Israel's defense minister meets his American counterpart in Washington as the two nations are increasingly at odds over the war in Gaza.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions, and friends of the NewsHour, including Kathy and Paul Anderson, and Camilla and George Smith.
These are people who are trying to change the world. Startups have this energy that energizes me. I'm thriving by helping others every day. People who know BDO.
On an American Cruise Line's journey, travelers experience the maritime heritage and culture of the Maine Coast and New England Islands. Our fleet of small cruise ships explore American landscapes, seaside villages, and historic harbors, where you can experience local customs and cuisine. American Cruise Lines, proud sponsor of PBS NewsHour.
The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, fostering informed and engaged communities. More at kf.org.
And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. Search and rescue efforts are underway in Baltimore after a major commuter bridge collapsed there overnight. Officials say 6 people remain unaccounted for.
In the middle of the night, a container ship slowly trying to exit Baltimore's outer harbor rams into a support beam of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, and all at once, the towering 1.6-mile-long structure plummets into the river below.
Now, would you think that you would physically see the Key Bridge tumble down? It looked like something out of an action.
By sunrise, the scope of the disaster came into full view. The on-ramp severed, the cargo ship buried beneath the bridge's mangled truss. Investigators are still seeking answers to what happened. Maryland Governor Wes Moore.
I know this has been a long night. We started coordinating immediately after the Key Bridge collapsed. The preliminary investigation points to an accident. We haven't seen any credible evidence of a terrorist attack.
A few minutes before impact, the ship's lights went out. Operators put out a mayday that the vessel had lost power, giving police time to divert traffic from the bridge before the collision.
Many of the vehicles were stopped before they got onto the bridge, which saved lives in a very, very heroic way.
Still, sonars detected several cars in the water, and authorities say a crew had been repairing potholes on the bridge when it collapsed. Maryland Secretary of Transportation said a massive search and rescue is underway.
We're basically searching for everyone that was potentially on the bridge. As you can imagine, it's the middle of the night. You know, what type of traffic was there? How many workers were there?
President Biden said today that he intends to have the federal government pay to rebuild the bridge.
It's going to take some time. The people of Baltimore can count on us, though, to stick with them at every step of the way.
The Key Bridge was one of 3 interstate crossings of the Patapsco River, which is a tributary of the Chesapeake. The remaining 2 are both lower clearance tunnels. The wreck has already snarled commuter traffic, as well as shipping traffic in and out of Baltimore. But experts say other harbors along the East Coast can handle the pressure.
Baltimore is not one of the bigger container ports in the region.
Emily Stousbol is an analyst at Zanetta, an international shipping analytics platform.
The ports of New York, New Jersey, and Virginia are much bigger, and also have at the moment capacity to be able to manage diverted volumes from Baltimore. If you combine those 3 ports in 2023, about 10% of containers were handled in Baltimore.
For now, the harbor is dotted with remnants of a bridge used by 30,000 drivers daily, with no timeline on when it will be operational again.
I'm Vanessa Ruiz in for Stephanie Side with NewsHour West. Updating our top story. This evening, the U.S. Coast Guard said the 6 people missing in the Baltimore bridge collapse are presumed dead. The search and rescue mission will transition to a recovery effort. Russian officials insisted again that Ukraine played a role in Friday's concert hall attack outside Moscow. A branch of the Islamic State group has claimed responsibility for killing 139 people there. But as workers spend another day clearing debris, the head of Russia's top security agency accused Kyiv and its allies.
We believe that the action was prepared by the Islamist radicals and facilitated by Western special services. As for the Ukrainian intelligence services, I think they're directly involved too.
The Russians have not presented evidence to support their claim. A Moscow court has extended the detention of American Evan Gershkovich again, this time through June. The Wall Street Journal reporter already spent a year behind bars accused of espionage. After he appeared in court today, the U.S. ambassador to Russia again rejected the charges and said the case is purely political.
As we cross the 1-year mark, the Russian government has yet to present any evidence to substantiate its accusations. Evan's case is not about evidence, due process, or rule of law. It is about using American citizens as pawns to achieve political ends.
Gershkovich and the Journal have denied the espionage allegations. A British court today blocked WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange from being extradited to the U.S. for now. The U.S. wants to prosecute Assange for publication of classified American documents back in 2010. The court said the U.S. must guarantee Assange is afforded the same First Amendment protections as a United States citizen and that the death penalty is not imposed. Washington has 3 weeks to give that guarantee or a new appeals process will begin. Back in this country, a state judge in New York imposed a gag order on former President Trump for his hush money trial next month. The judge's ruling said it is without question that the imminency of the risk of harm is now paramount. The gag order bars public statements about witnesses, prosecutors, court staff, and jurors. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced Nicole Shanahan as his running mate today. Shanahan is 38, a lawyer and philanthropist from California, and has never held elected office. But in Oakland, California, Kennedy told supporters that Shanahan met all his requirements for vice president.
I wanted a partner who was a gifted administrator, but also possesses the gift of curiosity, an open, inquiring mind, and the confidence to change even her strongest opinions in the face of contrary evidence.
Kennedy chose a running mate early because some states require it before he applies for ballot access. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton will pay nearly $300,000 to settle a criminal securities fraud case. The high-profile Republican faced trial next month on charges of duping investors in a tech startup. Under today's agreement, Paxton makes restitution and does community service, but keeps his elected position. In a passing of note, the sculptor Richard Serra has died. His monumental works of steel spirals and warped corridors belie their size with intimacy. His art encouraged close-up exploration even if it was inscrutable. The cause of death was pneumonia. Richard Serra was 85. So to come on the News Hour, the troubled rollout causes more delays for students seeking financial aid. An acclaimed foreign correspondent discusses his memoir and battle with terminal cancer, the changing landscape of podcasts, and much more.
This is the PBS News Hour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
For the first time since Roe v. Wade was overturned 2 years ago, abortion is once again before the U.S. Supreme Court. The justices today heard a case that centers on access to the most widely used abortion pill, mifepristone. Outside, on the steps of the court, protesters marched, chanted, and waved signs. Inside, arguments focused on the FDA's approval of the drug.
Not go along with the majority in that, but I'm not even sure that Justice Thomas would be at his center because he had some very good questions about standing as well. So that's my gut feeling at this point.
Well, we always have to trust your gut. Marcia Coyle, thank you so much as always.
My pleasure.
Today at the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin presented an alternative vision to Israel's stated assault plan on the southern Gazan city of Rafah. More than 1 million Gazans have fled their homes and are now sheltering there. Austin and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant met today as negotiations over a ceasefire and hostage release seem to hit an impasse. Nick Schifrin is following it all, and he joins me now. Nick, so how did this meeting today between Austin and Gallant go?
As you speak, negotiations continue.
All right, Nick Schifrin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Students waiting on financial aid will now have to wait even longer after the Department of Education just found a calculation error on hundreds of thousands of student aid applications. That means that right as students are trying to decide what school to attend, some have to make that choice not knowing key information about how much aid they're getting. Laura Barone Lopez is here to help us unravel all the details.
That's all on education. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Laura. After decades of covering war, journalist and author Rod Norland was in New Delhi when he was struck by a grand mal seizure and then given a diagnosis of incurable cancer. Nick Schifrin sat down with Norland to talk about facing death and his discovery of a grace and love that he had never felt before.
From Cambodia to Kabul, San Salvador to Sarajevo, Rod Norland is no stranger to death. He's been a foreign correspondent for more than 40 years, first for the Philadelphia Inquirer, then for Newsweek, and then the New York Times, including as bureau chief in Kabul, where he and I met for the first time. But if Norland shadowed death for all those years, today death shadows him. He's been diagnosed with waiting for the monsoon. Great to see you, Nick. Thank you very much.
Stay with us for a look at the gambling allegations against the translator for baseball's biggest star. But first, to the world of audio. An estimated 500 million people will listen to podcasts this year. That's the most in the medium's short history. Since the very term podcast was coined 20 years ago, the format has grown into a $25 billion industry. Spotify just revealed that its top-performing podcast...
Joyful. For the PBS News Hour, I'm Jeffrey Brown at On Air Fest in Brooklyn, New York.
One of the world's premier athletes, Shohei Ohtani, has been caught up in allegations of illegal gambling. The Los Angeles Dodger just signed a record 10-year, $700 million contract, but he's now engulfed in controversy. Here's what we know. Ohtani's former interpreter, Ibe Mizuhara, said he asked Ohtani to pay off millions of dollars.
That suggests that his legal camp feels confident in the evidence they have. We're just going to have to see how it shakes out.
All right, Andy McCullough of The Athletic, thank you so much for helping us wade through all of this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Finally tonight, Brandon Stossy is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of The Creative Independent. It's an online resource that provides emotional and practical guidance for writers and musicians and artists. Here, he shares his brief but spectacular take on the power of crying in public.
I think people can be disarmed by crying if you're not expecting it. It's a powerful thing. If someone's willing to go to that place in front of you, you react to it. I think very rarely does someone cry and you just have zero emotion. I feel like I cry pretty frequently. I cry during sports. I'm a huge Buffalo Bills fan, and sometimes I cry tears of joy. My mother died 13 years ago, so I find sometimes around then I'll cry more. Then my wife points out, oh yeah, you're like nearing the anniversary of your mother's death. So I think sometimes there's those points in the year where you just cry more. The first time I noticed people crying in public was when I was jogging, and I just saw someone running towards me, and there were
videos on our website. And that is the News Hour for tonight. I'm William Brangham. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.